If you want to trade like a rebel, you got to come to RebelCon 2022. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas, at the fabulous Four Seasons Resort. It will be more fun and more live trading than we've ever done before. That's why it's called RebelCon 2022. We're going to have barbecues and double the amount of live trading. The guest speakers, as soon as we announce those, this thing's going to be sold out, limited to 250 people. Sign up now for RebelCon 2022 at the Four Seasons in Dallas, Texas.
Welcome to the rebellion.
Good morning. I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Take for Market Rebellion on this Wednesday morning. Yes, it's hump day once again. I'll tell you what, yesterday, you want to talk about a little bit of a divide of what's working and what wasn't. Take a look at what was going on yesterday with the NASDAQ, which finished the day down about 20 points. Now, the NASDAQ actually traded the majority of the day upwards somewhere in the positive territory. I'm near that flat line up there, but it was the Dow, and the Dow definitely stood out. Why was that? Well, we had our best part of the day in the midday, but then things just really did fall apart, finishing near the lows of the day, finishing down 1.25%. As a matter of fact, 400 points to the downside, and a lot of different contributors to that. Before we get to that, crude oil still hanging around that 94 level. And we've been talking about 94 to 100, kind of the range where it seems to be bound right now. We'll see if it can break out of that one direction or the other. Nat gas, that is something that absolutely exploded to the upside. And then it's been just stair-stepping down ever since, getting up towards 10. And now here we are at 760 yesterday on the close, where we did see a pretty big move, where we hadn't seen a move for a while. Take a look at what happened yesterday with the 2-year and the 10-year. The 2-year jumped all the way up towards 3, and the 10-year actually started to lift off. It was 256. It got all the way up to 275 for the 10-year. Those are big moves. They don't sound like big moves. Those are actually some pretty big moves. We did see a little bit of a holding on, at least for Bitcoin, at that 23,000. That's where it seemed to find itself planted for the bulk of the day yesterday. So what were some of the biggest contributors? Why was the Dow down as much as it was at 400 points? And meanwhile, you look over at the NASDAQ and it was just barely down at all. Well, it was a combination of just about everything that just does encompass the Dow. Financials down about 1%. Nothing really terrible, but down about 1%, led by Goldman, JP Morgan, Citi, those kinds of names, the usual suspects. Industrials down about a 1%. You got Caterpillar, you got Deere, you've got Honeywell. Honeywell and Caterpillar recently had some very, very violent moves in different directions. Then you go to the materials space, down about 1%. It's Freeport, it's Cliffs, it's US Steel, all getting a little bit of a pull to the downside. Staples down just a little bit, nothing terrible. You look at Coke and Pepsi, some of the contributors there. Consumer discretion, well, a little bit of a pull probably from Amazon. I look over at tech, not down significantly, but down a little more than about 0.5% or so. Apple was down just a little bit. What was hit the hardest in the Dow? What inside of the Dow itself, of the Dow 30, really was pulling on things? This is where it gets interesting, because everything I just mentioned plays a part to this. You've got Caterpillar, you've got Boeing, you've got Intel, you've got Visa, Nike, Walgreens, Verizon, all down 2% or more yesterday. So that gives you a reason why you are seeing the Dow move to the direction it was, and not really the same areas which we were seeing in the NASDAQ itself. So there are a couple of names out there that definitely were in positive territory. It was Lucid, it was Datadog, it was Carnival Cruise with a little bit of a bounce. We've seen that time and time again. It hasn't been sustainable, but we've seen bounces out of that. I tell you what, Intuitive Surgical also hung in there pretty nicely. Molson Coors Tap, definitely under pressure yesterday. We talked about that a little bit. It stayed down at those levels. You had DR Horton, we had Whirlpool, throw in a little bit of Old Dominion as well. A lot of the different names that were pulling on the markets in one direction or another. So rough day. Dow, it was the Dow particularly that everybody was attacking when you see those names that I just read off. As we get into today, it's like yesterday didn't happen. We're just kind of wiping that to the side right now. We've cut those losses from yesterday in half today. We were up about 180 points early on, up about 85 points on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ's been on an absolute just tear to the upside. Last I looked, we were up about 190 points on the NASDAQ. It's been up over 200 points already. And then you look over at the Dow itself, it's been flirting with around anywhere between 190, call it around 2.25. So a nice rebound coming from the Dow, cutting, like I say, yesterday's losses in half. We'll see if that holds. We're only 1 hour into the day. A little bit of improvement in Bitcoin. Bitcoin was 23,000, as I mentioned yesterday, 23,300 today. A little bit of a bump to the upside. Nothing to sneeze at, but definitely a little bit of a bump. Where we're seeing a little bit of a pullback is crude. Crude actually 96. Today we're looking closer to the 94s. I look at nat gas, 775. A little bit of a lift, nothing big. We are seeing another substantial move, however. Look at the 2-year. I mentioned how it got up to 3 yesterday, 311 today. I'm looking at the 10-year, sitting there at about 278. So a little bit of a lift after that selling and that volatile move to the downside. We are seeing a little bit of a recovery in the yesterday's session as well as today. We'll see if that continues with volatility right around those 22s right now. It's been in the 23s, 22s, that lower end of volatility. We're starting to see it sort of find itself there where, matter of fact, in the last week or so, we've been very rarely much over that 25 level. So we're watching that volatility start to ease back just ever so slightly. Consumer discretion, definitely the leader, but that's given up a little bit of where it was, but call it up about 1.5%. Communications, on the other hand, was up only 1%. That has doubled in the first hour of trade to be up closer to 2%. I look at tech doubling as well. That's why we're seeing the NASDAQ on this nice sprint. It's up a little more than 0.5%. Then I look up nearly 1.5%. Financials, not a whole lot. Energy, really not a whole lot. Utilities, they're getting smacked around a little bit today. Utilities down about 1.5%, at least for right now. Yesterday, some of the big news items of the day. Taiwan, certainly with the Pelosi over there, that certainly did shake things up, but we are not seeing that reflected in the markets, at least today. Earnings do continue to roll on. We had AMD. They beat on their profits. Their revenues did miss. And for that reason, apparently, is why it was getting sold off as heavy as it was. We're going to get back to that name when we get over to unusual in just a second. We also had Starbucks. Howard Schultz is back. Those numbers for Starbucks sure looked pretty great with Howard Schultz back in the driver's seat. For now, it's definitely temporary. Then I look over at PayPal. Elliott management being heavily involved there. They did beat on the top and the bottom line. People are looking at that. That name is absolutely rocketing today. But let's not forget how much of a hammering it's taken as well. So you got to take a little bit of the good and a little bit of the bad and mix it up. So PayPal definitely stands out, along with Moderna, along with Ford, along with CVS, along with Okta and Datadog, Goldman Sachs, American Express. This is a nice broad move across not just the NASDAQ, but absolutely across the Dow stocks as well. Apple, Microsoft having a pretty decent day. I got to give a shout out. Celsius. It was a little over a year ago. It was in March of 2021. A lot of people thought I was crazy because I talked about this company called Celsius Energy Drinks. The energy drink factor that comes into Coke, comes into Pepsi. Well, we had the Pepsi news just about a week or so ago. When we were looking at it in March of 2021, Celsius was trading about $46, $48. Now it hit 110 just the other day, still hanging right around that 105, 106 sort of a range. A big, big move, and it's up today as well. We have Match getting hammered. We have Ulta, the beauty company, getting hammered as well. Airbnb getting whacked once again. Intel cannot find any solid ground. That's a name that has struggled and struggled and struggled. I got two unusuals, and we're going to get out of here. This one is not unusual except for the fact that it hits so often. It's almost crazy. I had this yesterday. Yesterday, John and I were talking about the craziness we were seeing in ChargePoint yesterday. 2 hits in the first, 2 hours of the day or something like that. Well, today, it's the first hour of the day. It's hitting again. ChargePoint's trading right around in that range from 12 to call it 15 and a half. Was trading around 15 and a half today. We had a buyer of 30,000 of the August 12th expiring. Gives you about a week and a half, call it. The 16 calls, those are going for about 61 cents. 30,000 of those are getting rolled from an expiration of this week of the 15 and a half. So they're buying a little bit of time. They're going a little bit higher, but they're taking some money off the table. Always a smart thing to watch when we're seeing successful trades, and yet they still want to be involved in the trade. Doesn't matter if it's going up or down. In this case, going up, wanting to take some of that money off the table, but still want to be involved in the trade. That one was pretty interesting. I was going to do a different number, and lo and behold, right before I came on here, I see this one, and it's amazing. So I talked about AMD. We talked about the earnings. The stock got hammered pretty good. It got down. I think it was down towards about 94 or something like that. It bounced back. Here it is at 98. So 98.60. We got 40,000. Yeah, 40,000 of the August 5th. That's Friday. You got today, Thursday, Friday for these to actually play out. But that stock is not that terribly far away. They're buying the August 5th 100 calls. They started at about 50 cents. They paid up as the stock was moving up with this buying that was coming in there. Something to keep an eye on. I always, if I miss that earlier part, sometimes I want to be a little bit patient. Sometimes that works. Sometimes that doesn't. But they're paying, call it 50 cents up to about $1.50. Earlier, the buying 50 cents, and as that stock started to move up towards $1.50, these are the 100 strike calls. Big, big number, 40,000 of those. We've been seeing these big block trades coming in more and more across the board. Saw at least 6 or 7 examples of that yesterday alone. Folks, have a great day of trading. Educate yourself. You have to know the derivatives world well if you want to have any kind of success and understand why you're having that success or failure. You want to at least have that education behind you. Folks, make sure you're educated, and please have a great day of trading.